Most guitarists think that fingerpicking takes years to learn. I thought that myself because I spent way too long figuring things out the hard way, making every mistake that you can make and just ultimately staying stuck in that beginner zone. But here's what I ultimately learned. You don't need decades of practice, you just need to train the right movements. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact movements using some exercises that I've used to help thousands of students with BGI, even late in life beginners, build solid fingerpicking skills. And these exercises that we're going to cover, they're all mapped out in my free Fingerpicking Quickstart guide. You can pick that up at the link below. It's got the tab for each of these exercises. Plus, I'm going to include 2 bonus sections here that aren't in the guide. My favorite easy to learn MicroLicks and a 12-bar solo that brings everything together. So grab that Fingerpicking Quickstart if you don't already have it, and let's dig in. Our first exercise is aimed at helping us get control of the thumb. The thumb has a really important job when it comes to fingerpicking, and so we're going to focus on that first. We've got to get control of the thumb. You want to be able to play a steady beat, nice and evenly with the thumb. So our first exercise is going to do just that with the 6th string. The 6th string is going to be played with the thumb. We're just plucking that along with a metronome. We'll bring that on in a second for a demo, but we're also going to make this a little bit more interesting by putting a chord on the fretboard. Here, I'm just fretting an E major chord, right? And really, we're only going to play the top 3 strings. And here's the reason. I want you to go ahead and get used to using your index, middle, and ring finger to pick out chord tones. So we're going to place those on the 3rd string, that's the index finger, middle finger is on the 2nd string, and the ring finger is here on the 1st string. So just place those on the guitar and then fret your chord. And you really don't need the whole thing. You could just play the top 3 strings like that. But I want you to see where this is coming from, an E major chord. All right, we're going to play one of the most basic movements here as we get control of our thumb. This movement right here, where we just kind of squeeze, that's a very natural movement. If you just took the guitar away, like either hand really, these things want to work together, right? You'll have a tendency as a new finger picker to just always want to, pinch and move the fingers and the thumb together. We're going to lean into that for this first exercise. Don't worry, we'll kind of separate things a little bit later, but right now, getting started on the right foot is all about the thumb. So our exercise is simply going to be pinching with those fingers like we just laid out and playing through the bass just on the 6th string open, right? So the exercise in full, the first measure anyway, is 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, a couple things to notice in this first measure before we go moving things around. What I'm doing with the thumb is picking away. This is called a free stroke, right? A rest stroke would be pushing through to the next string. You can do that, but you're going to find that it's difficult to pinch with these fingers and rest at the same time. So I want this thumb to just kind of move out and away as these fingers just do this gentle plucking, right? We don't have to do anything crazy. Should be no tension really in your hand. If there is, shake it out and start over. We just want to do this nice and easy. Again, find a tempo that's nice and relaxing and achievable for you, right? And we want to just pinch. I'm not even really counting here yet. I just want to get this movement down, right? But then what we want to do after we've got this movement, this pinching, kind of balling up of your fist with that free stroke, we also want to put a little palm mute on the guitar. So what's happening there is you can see the heel of my hand is placed on the string, just enough to deaden it. If we played this without that, this is what we would get. But I'm just placing my palm gently right here on the saddle, just before the saddle, just to kind of deaden it. It's very light. We're not crushing the guitar. It's very light here, just to kind of get a nice little thumb. That's the palm mute, and that's the last little bit of technique that we need to do this. Now we need to put it in action with a metronome. So let's do that. I am playing this at 80 beats per minute, and we're just going to count to 4. Now watch what I do as I move through the rest of the exercise. I'm going to move my chord to different beats. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, doing here is building that thumb's job. Its most important job is to keep that steady beat. But we're always going to be playing something else along with it, whether it's a lick or a basic chord like in this exercise. So we want to already, right out of the gate, get started doing the chording where we want it to. That's why we're moving it through the beat. So this is actually getting a few things going for you in one exercise. We've got the steady bass thing pumping out on the 6th string. We are learning how to play a chord right on top of the beat, and we're learning how to really bring in some good timing fundamentals by placing that chord right where we want it. And of course, the unsung hero of this exercise is the metronome. They can be difficult, but I really want you to play with a metronome because the more you can sync up your thumb with the click, the better. And one other tip for you before we move on to the second exercise is to tap your foot along with the metronome clicks. And then you can visually sync up your thumb and your foot tap. Like for me, I do it by picking up and kind of tapping my heel so that the front of my foot, the ball of my foot is on the ground so that I can see my leg tapping. You can barely see it here in this shot, but they are together. I'm doing it at the same time. So these two keep the beat. All right. Now, the next exercise is really a variation of that. We want to go ahead and get used to doing not only the 6th string bass, but also the 5th string bass. There's a lot of great blues music that's, say, in the key of A. You're going to find yourself playing on this 5th string quite a lot. So let's dive into exercise number 2. This exercise is similar to what we just did over an E major chord, but here we're going to move into C. And we're going to use the 5th string as our bass note. We're still going to play on the quarter note pulse there, and we're still going to play the same basic exercise by picking on the top 3 strings here. But there's one other thing that's different, and you might hear it a little already. I'm not playing with a palm mute here. I want to be up and off of the string. We need that ability too. I like this, the thumping sounds great, but we also need to be able to play and just hear the note ringing out. All right, there's a fair amount of country blues, folk type picking where you need that note to sound. All right, so we're going to work on that here over the C chord, and this is as well going to be at 80 beats per minute. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those two exercises work really well together to help build that first stage of thumb control, right? We've given the thumb its job to stay on the beat. I can't stress enough to practice those two exercises as well as the other ones that we're going to cover here with a metronome. That keeps you true, keeps you honest, and really starts to ingrain a sense of good timing and kind of tune up your internal clock as you're working through these exercises and gaining those fundamental movements. The next set of exercises are going to be very similar. We're going to work over an E for one of the exercises and over a C for the second one, but they are both aimed at getting some independence going. So far, we've kind of had that motion where we're closing down together. It's a natural motion, right? And for this next, we're going to fight that a little bit. We're going to start playing in between the beat with our chord tones and kind of displacing that chord. Let's have a look at exercise number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and. So what we're doing here is getting in between the beat. We are separating the thumb from the fingers for the first time here. Right? They still move as a unit. The first finger on the 3rd string, the middle finger on the 2nd, and the ring finger on the 1st string, just like this. Right? They're all together, right? That's a great way to step into these skills, is not give things too many jobs all at once, right? And there's going to be plenty of times when you're playing when you want to be able to do that, right? That's something that's cool that we can do as finger pickers, is pick these 3 chord tones all at once. Right? You can't really do that with a pick. Even, though it might be a slight difference, there is a subtle difference in strumming versus plucking, right? So that's why we're going to work on building that skill and leaning into the fact that your hand most likely wants to kind of stay together. And notice that my fingers are really, they're not tight together, but they are connected here. I'm using them very much as a unit. I'm kind of using them as a little buddy system to just kind of keep everything nice and steady. It's almost like a nice little way to put some training wheels on this movement, to move that bigger group rather than just try to do one finger at a time. We're going to do that next, but we got to get good at this first. All right, so again, it's bass, then chord, then bass. And the trick is doing this separately, meaning the bass is separate from the chord, something you're going to do a lot in finger picking, and that you can still come back and play on the beat. So keep that metronome going, keep your foot tapping, and keep that thumb synced up with the beat. All right. For exercise number 4, we are going to do the same thing, but we're going to switch the bass to the 5th string. We're going to lift up so we're not playing a palm mute, and we're going to work this same pattern through over a C major chord. Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 and. All right, so we've worked on drilling the thumb to do its job and pluck a bass note out on that steady beat. And then we've worked on using the fingers to pluck a chord tone on the beat and off the beat. So we've kind of worked on thumb control throughout this, and spoiler alert, we're going to continue that in the next couple of exercises. But then we've also worked on using these fingers as a group, as a unit, and then we've worked on kind of breaking them from the thumb, that natural tendency to want to just close everything up all at once. We're going to take that to the next level now by introducing some finger separation. And this is where things get really cool. We've got to put in the time in the first set of exercises and the second set of exercises, but here we start to really turn each finger into its own pick. It's a whole lot of fun, and here are a couple of exercises that will help you get there. Hey, quick reminder, all 6 of these exercises are in the Fingerpicking Quickstart PDF in the description below. The guide includes tab and practice tips for each exercise, so grab it for free and it'll really make following along much easier. Exercise 5 is going to help us build that separation among the picking fingers. And we have kind of an elongated picking pattern. And what I mean by that is our bass kind of takes a break, right? Normally, so far in these exercises, we've been playing 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, what our bass is going to do with the thumb on the 5th string without a palm mute is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to weave some notes in between there. We're just going to walk up the chord tones, the 3rd string, 2nd string, and 1st string. And we're going to dedicate that 3rd string picking to the index finger. The 2nd string picking is the middle finger, and then the ring finger is taking care of the 1st string on top. And we're going to play 1 and 2 and. But let's not even really pay so much attention to the count right now. And notice I'm not using a metronome yet. Just get used to the movement, right? Bass, index, middle, ring, right? Kind of feels natural to go in order, right? So when we start changing the order, the things get a little bit more difficult. But let's just go through and try to play this. Just loop it freely, not paying too much attention to time. Just want you to get the movement down for the first part when you're getting introduced to this exercise, right? But then the rest of the exercise does start to test a few different skills. Like, for instance, when we get back to the bass note after this, remember we said the bass note's going to happen on beat 3? I'm going to pinch with my middle finger and the bass note. And that middle finger, I'm going to try to get this finger out of the way here. That middle finger is plucking the 2nd string, right? So we have 1 and 2 and 3. That's played together. It's a pinching motion with the middle finger and the thumb. Okay, thumb 5th string and middle finger 2nd string. Then we go back and play this little ascending move through the strings. 3rd string, 2nd string, 1st string. So the pattern repeats itself over a couple of bars, but this is what the exercise looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... You may have felt that this exercise was a little quick, and the reason is that we're playing on eighth note subdivisions here versus, for the most part, the quarter note subdivision of a bar. So things can feel twice as fast. Don't let that tense you up. If it feels that way for you, then reduce your beats per minute on the metronome and work through the pattern, right? I want you to find a nice, comfortable tempo that you can really get the hang of this exercise. Once you do that, then it's time to challenge yourself by ratcheting up the tempo and doing it at a faster BPM. But we've got one more exercise, and it's a great counterpart to number 5 that we just covered. We're going to go back to an E major chord to do it, and we're going to really bring the thumb back on to do its job right on the quarter note. So start with exercise 5 when you're working on separation, because you've got a little more space. The thumb kind of gets out of the way for a second while you're really focusing on your fingers. But then we've got to layer those two things together. The thumb doing its job all the time, meaning on that quarter note pulse, and then the fingers doing what they're supposed to do no matter what the thumb is doing. That's what this exercise number 6 is about. Let's take a look at it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So with this exercise, we are bringing the thumb back on to do its job of playing on that steady quarter note pulse. If we count it out, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. But we layer in some separate picking among our fingers just by climbing up this pattern, 3rd string, 2nd and 1st, with the dedicated finger, with the index finger, then the 2nd, our middle finger, and then the ring finger on the 1st. Just like that. But then we work it back down, right? So the full exercise is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? And we'll repeat that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So notice the second half is 3 and 4 and. We still have that pinch with the bass and the 2nd string there. And then of course we fill in to finish our pattern on the 3rd string. So once again, this exercise, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, now the 6 exercises that we just covered, those are your foundation. They're all in the quick start guide below, but now I want to show you something that's not in that guide, MicroLicks. These are small little licks, little fills that will help you sound more musical and really bluesy right away. Let's take a look. I'm really excited to present this material to you because it was one of my big aha moments when it came to getting started with acoustic blues. It really was a game changer for me, and I don't say that lightly. I was kind of struggling to figure out how my favorite pickers really just kind of mixed in these cool little licks along with their chords and, you know, created a nice little composition, and it just seemed really out of reach until I started noticing these little lick fragments, these little sounds that just tended to recur not only within an artist's repertoire, but then from artist to artist as well. And of course, each artist has their own little way of putting their sonic stamp on it, but there was this common thread of these tiny little lick building blocks that really was helpful for me when I started pulling them out and putting them to work on my guitar. And I call them MicroLicks, and they are really short lick fragments, usually consisting of just 3 or 4 notes, but they are incredibly useful. They stand on their own, which is great if you're just getting started. You can create some instantly bluesy sound with just a few notes and really work them into some of the chordal playing that we gained in the exercises for the Fingerpicking Quickstart. And I'm going to share with you 3 of my favorite MicroLicks that will help you really get some bluesy sounds happening on your guitar in the key of E. So with that, let's start with my absolute favorite MicroLick, very usable, instant blues, the train whistle lick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. All right, now here it is with a count. 4, 1 and 2 two triplet. All right, now I'm going to work in some chord tones around this E major. We might even walk up to an E7 like this, but that move should be familiar to you if you've worked through the exercises in the Fingerpicking Quickstart. So here we go. 3, 4, 1, and 2 triplet. Let's do it again. 1 and 2 triplet. All right, now let's break it down now that we've heard it a few times. First of all, can you tell why we're calling this the train whistle lick? We definitely get that feeling of a train rolling down the tracks and blowing its whistle. And if you can't quite hear it, then let's just hear these two notes. I'm at the 8th fret on the 2nd string, and then I'm at the 7th fret on the 1st string. Let's hear them together harmonically. All right, so you can kind of hear that sound happening, but there's one other thing that we can do to the G note that's on the 2nd string, 8th fret, to really sell that train whistle sound. Bend up. Keep your index finger planted on the B note. That's the 1st string note. And we're going to bend up slightly on the G. That's the 2nd string. And you can hear that train whistle vibe happening there. Now, a couple things about this bend. It is not targeting a specific note. I'm pushing it slightly sharp, but I'm not pushing it all the way up to the next fretted note. I'm really in between the frets here. Right? A quarter step bend, which would be in between the frets, microtonal blues bend, all of that is just referring to this pushing the note sharp. Right? But when we unpack the lick, I played it separately. I separated out the tones, and I'm playing that sequence of notes. So that's the 1st string, the 2nd with that slight bend, and then back to the 1st and 2nd, but this time completely off the fretboard. Now, there's something cool that happens with being off of the fretboard there after your lick. We'll get to that in just a second, but let's place this in time. And keep in mind that you can move this to different times while you're playing, but right here, we're gonna play 1 and 2 triplet. So we start on the and of 1, 4, 1, and 2 triplet. So 2 is played as a triplet. 1 and 2 triplet. Right? So we've got 3 notes played on beat 2. Now when we bring the thumb in, the thumb's got to keep going with a steady 1, 2, 3, 4 count. Right? So that's important. We're now really dialing into the finger separation as we're plucking individual notes here over keeping that bass nice and steady. That's why those exercises really help. We want to drill the thumb to be able to play without interfering with what our fingers need to do. Let's do the lick again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2 triplet. Now, we've got the open strings ringing here, and that's a good thing because that gives us some space to take our hand off of the fretboard and move and get ready. We got plenty of time here to fret an E chord. And I'm working on the top 3 strings and just putting this little move. This isn't a MicroLick, although I suppose it could be. We're just moving through the top of an E major, briefly putting down the little finger on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string as we walk into the E7, and that's with the little finger on the 3rd fret there. All right, so that's our first MicroLick. Now I mentioned, let's do that again. Now, I mentioned that we can take this and change it around as artists tend to do. You'll want to play this in a way that sounds good to you, in a way that works in whatever situation you're playing in, right? This is a good way to practice. We want to learn it maybe as written as I've demonstrated it here, but let's then take it and improvise with it a little bit. Make it your own. Make sure that you know it and you've got command over how it works and how it can be useful to you in a jam. So what I'm getting at here is we can vary the rhythm, we can play some notes together, but we're still just going to be working with these two notes and the open strings. So maybe if we're playing and improvising with the train whistle idea and not just as a specific MicroLick, maybe it sounds like this, right? Now we're kind of taking the idea and expanding it by plucking together, right? And then releasing to the open strings. And maybe we just do that, right? Play them together. It's a very versatile MicroLick. Let's run it through some of the variations here, just for fun. Here are some suggestions for you. Learn the train whistle MicroLick as demonstrated at first with the separate notes being plugged, but then take some time as you get comfortable with moving up to that position and back to a chord. Take some time to change it up like I just did. Improvise with the rhythm. Change it up to be something that sounds good to you. Just make sure you're getting good, clean notes, and over time you'll develop a taste for what you like surrounding the train whistle lick. But it's instantly bluesy, something that I use still to this day. Almost every day I pick up the guitar to play some acoustic blues, and I think that it will be very useful for you. Plus, it's fun. This is a fun lick for sure. And the other licks I want to show you are really fun and as useful. So let's get started with the next MicroLick. All right, this lick has the same structure rhythmically as what we did over the train whistle lick. We pluck the open first string, then second, and then back to the first and second. And the only note that we're actually fretting here, everything else is open, but the one that we're fretting is that D note on the third fret of the second string. 3, 4, 1, and 2 triplet. Hear how that's very similar? All right, nothing wrong with chaining them together like that. In fact, that's a very useful way to employ these MicroLicks to get them working on your guitar. Now check this out. If we use this, and you can play it with your little finger there if you want, or no problem, getting out of the chord position and playing it with your ring finger like I just did there. Either is fine. We're going to leverage those open strings to help us move around and get back into place when we need to be. But check this out. We've got that same idea that we can work in with our chords. Just kind of start filling out our sound. 1 and 2 triplet. 1. Now check this out. Kind of chain these things together. Start moving around the fretboard, right? Getting some confidence. Playing licks up and down the fretboard, right? And again, we're leveraging the open strings to do that. Before we leave this MicroLick and cover the last one, I want to remind you that just as we did with the train whistle lick, we can take this lick in our home open position and we can vary the rhythm, vary the picking, and start to improvise and create our own sound. So we might come up with something like this. Now let's move on to the final MicroLick that we're going to cover here, and it really is a great complement to the last one that works around the open position. Let's give it a listen and then we'll break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3 triplet. 4. All right, so this works really well around our open position E chord here. And we're going to play a full beat and then start our lick. Before we were playing on the and of 1, and that's where we started the train whistle lick, 1 and 2 triplet. And that's where we started our second lick, 1 and 2 triplet. Here, we're going to start on top of beat 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 triplet. All right, our triplet is on beat 3. And notice though, for beat 2, we went up to the G note on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. And you can also give that a little push. We did it here, same note as our train whistle lick. That can help put a little bit of bluesy articulation on the note. So 1, 2, 3 triplet. The triplet is pinching with the bass in the open 1st string, the D note on the 2nd string, 3rd fret, and then open 1st string. And then we go again with an open string ending. That helps give us a chance to change positions on the fretboard. Maybe you're just going back to the chord. Right, and I snuck in a little open string note to start us off there. Totally cool to do there. 1, 2, 3 triplet, back to the chord. Right? But we could also use that moment in time to say jump up to our friend the train whistle lick. 1, 2, 3 triplet, 1, 2, and 3. All right, there we just put each of the MicroLicks that we've learned together in one little idea. This is really where we can supercharge a few MicroLicks. I want you to first learn them as written, just so you got a good structure for where the notes are. And then I want you to take some time improvising and changing things up rhythmically and maybe a little bit harmonically within that structure of each of these 3 MicroLicks. But then I want you to start connecting them. And don't forget to work in some basic chord sounds like that we picked up in the exercises portion of the Fingerpicking Quickstart. That's going to really start to round out your sound and get you moving. What I love about this is we've got some licks that are right here under our fingers for an E chord, but we don't just stop there. With the train whistle, we're moving a good distance up the fretboard. So right off the rip, we're playing some bluesy stuff that's out of what might be our comfort zone. And as you work on this and work on moving back, making this big jump, just look at that visually on the neck, then you are expanding your comfort zone in a way that is insanely practical. I told you I love this stuff. This is one of my absolute favorite lessons because I know it's full of some quick wins that I know that you can get. You just have to spend some time working on getting the sound and getting it to fall in time. So the best way to do that is to go back to the exercises and make sure that you can play both on the beat and in between the beat. And you should be playing with a metronome to keep you honest when it comes to your timekeeping. And if you absolutely hate a metronome, I get it. Use a backing track or a drum track or something that is an honest, reliable, and accurate timekeeper, right? That's going to help you know that you drop back in after playing a lick right on the beat. That is crucial. So don't let that part of your practice slip away. But hopefully this doesn't even feel like practice. It's fun. You can hear some bluesy things just about to fall out of your guitar, just putting together these 3 MicroLicks. I'm super excited for the next step that we're going to take in the next video, and that is we're going to put this together in a 12-bar blues solo. We're going to do that and do some chord changes, right? And you'll see that we can take some of the MicroLick ideas and move them into different chords as we work on an E blues. It's an incredibly fun journey, and I can't wait for you to see that one, but you got to spend some time with these MicroLicks, get them under your fingers, and don't neglect your thumb practice, and I think you'll be well on your way to putting together a really nice 12-bar blues. In this lesson, we're going to bring together a lot of the concepts that we've worked hard on in the Fingerpicking Quickstart into a nice 12-bar blues solo. Remember back to the first set of exercises. They might have felt like exercises, but really they are drilling the chord movements that you're going to use as a fingerstyle blues player. And then we layered in some MicroLicks for some fun bluesy moves. And now what we're going to do is bring those two things together in a real 12-bar blues solo. Fingerstyle, of course. So let's get started by letting you have a listen to the example solo, and then I'll come back and break it down. But please listen closely to what's going on and think about what you've already learned. The dead bass with the thumb playing on the beat. Think about the finger separation that you're going to see. Those are more of the technical things. And then think about the MicroLicks, those 3 component little building block licks that we covered in the last lesson, and see if you can hear where they're used here and where maybe they're a little bit of a variation from exactly what we covered in the last lesson. All right, so what I'm coaching you to do here is to listen actively. That's going to help you when it comes to getting this down on your guitar. All right, let's have a listen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear the familiar concepts at play here? We've got some E dead bass, we've got some E chord tones mixed in, and then we threw in some MicroLicks and really chained them together to create a flowing idea, a complete musical thought. Then of course we run this to a very typical 12-bar blues progression, and we'll review that in just a second, but we ultimately end up with a nice 12-bar solo. So let's go back to the split view and have a look at exactly how I'm getting this on the guitar. This starts out with this MicroLick, where we're plucking the open first string and then our bend on the D with that little bluesy quarter step in, and then open, open. That's first string, second string. And then we follow it up with this one. We just kind of play them back to back. Listen. And then we toss in our separated train whistle lick here. So we're playing 1 and 2 triplet, 3, 4 triplet, 1 and 2 triplet, 3, 4. All right, and then for the next measure, we're gonna do something very similar. Actually, we're gonna start out the same, 1 and 2 triplet, 3, 4 triplet, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. All right, right there we play our chord move, which is basically what we covered in the examples back in our exercises. And that's simply starting here. This is really all that's happening. I'm just fretting a chord because this is where it's coming from, our E chord. So we're playing 1 and beat 2. I'm putting down the little finger for this classic blues move as I'm playing the C sharp. That's the 2nd fret, 2nd string there. And I'm doing that with my little finger. So then I can just come up 1 more fret to the 3rd fret and play the D note, which gives this a bluesy E7 vibe. So altogether, that walk up is 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Here's something else that I did. This is the first time really that our thumb is going to do something other than that quarter note bass pulse. And it's just really quick right here as a way to transition out of E, 3, 4, and 1 over into the A chord. And all it is 4 and 1. Right, so the and of 4, I'm playing the G as I'm moving into an A chord, and in this case, A7 really. That's the full chord. You'll see me play it this way most of the time, but same thing where I'm barring at the 2nd fret, open 5th string, and that bar, by the way, is 4, 3, and 2, and then the G on top, string 1. All right, now we're not going to play all of that, but it's good to get in the habit of seeing where all of this comes from in relation to a chord that you know or should learn, because we're going to use it a lot in the blues. But what we're going to do after we get there is switch our bass to that steady bass but now on the 5th string, right? And then we're going to kind of call on one of our familiar MicroLicks. And it's interesting that this works over the A7 chord as well as it did over the E7. It just kind of paints it in a slightly different color. All right, same lick right there at the end. All we're doing to get to that lick is just playing that G, 1 and 2 and 3. Here's the lick right on top of beat 3, 3, 4 triplet. Right, so you see that same lick making an appearance here just over A. And then we do the same thing for the second measure over A. We're really changing the chord, changing the feel just a little bit by moving over to the A chord, but we're kind of grounded and calling back to what we've already done. Now we're up to bar 7 in our 12-bar blues progression, which means we're back to the E chord. And we're going to the train whistle sound. But we're not going to just play the strict MicroLick, right? We've already done that, although we're going to hint at it a little bit. But we're going to do something different, both in bar 7 and in bar 8. Let's check it out. So we're back over the E chord, so our bass is going to be the 6th string open, played on the 4 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going back to train whistle, and we're going to separate the notes, at least for the first part of this, for the first measure. We're going to play starting on the and of 1, we're going to alternate between the 1st string and the 2nd string. Now every time we hit the 2nd string, we are going to do that little bluesy bend, that microtonal quarter step bend, right? So we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So notice we're just doing that 2-string pattern on top 3 times, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now when I get to 4, I'm not actually done. I'm going to pluck through the triplet, really our original MicroLick. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 triplet. And now, normally we've been shifting positions, leveraging those open strings, but here I want to stay close by because we're going back to the train whistle for the next measure. But here, 1 and 2 and 3, we're going to pluck those together. And again, when we're playing, I'm going to bend just the 2nd string slightly sharp. So 1, and we're starting on the and of 1 with our train whistle notes, just like we did in the previous measure. So 1 and 2 and 3. Now with beat 3, you see I'm pinching open strings. 6 is the bass, right? We know that's happening right on schedule. Top 2 strings open. So 1 and 2 and 3. But here, we've got one more beat left in this measure. And what we're going to do is play this little MicroLick. Very useful. It's actually a triplet starting on beat 4. 4 triplet. Now I'm plucking this because of my picking style and my overall sort of framework and dedicating thumb to the lower 3 strings and an index to 3rd, middle to the 2nd string, and then ring to the 1st, right? I'm relying on that, which means that for this, I'm plucking index finger and then down with the thumb. And that triplet rhythm. So we've got 4 triplet, right? Now what's cool about this is it really is a lead in to beat 1 of the next measure. And this might sound a little bit odd and maybe like this note doesn't fit, but it really is part of a B7 chord. And if you want to really punch this up and add some things later, then you can definitely fill out a B7 chord here. But what I want to do is just drop down, so 4 triplet 1 to the D sharp. That is on the 1st fret of the 4th string. Then we come in and play just sparse bass notes. But this time, 2nd fret of the 5th string, right? It's coming from this B7 chord. 4 triplet 1, 4 triplet 1, 2, 3, 4, and all right, there we've got another moment where we're moving on the bass string on the offbeat, on the in-between beat. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Then we're back to our MicroLick over A, which we've done before. And then we're going to finish up with some train whistle on the last couple of bars. So we're back to E with our bass. This is bar 11. Last 2 bars here. So 1 and 2 and 3 and... All right. Then final measure is simply our chord move there. All right, now that we've walked through the bars, why don't we play through this so that we can remember how this whole thing sounds as a complete solo. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you just saw brings everything together. We got thumb control, we got finger independence, we got MicroLicks. They're all working together into one bluesy package. But here's the thing, these exercises, these movements, they are fundamental, but they are just the beginning. So if you're asking yourself what comes next, that's why I created the Fingerstyle Roadmap. The roadmap takes these fundamentals that we just went through and guides you through a proven sequence of lessons. We're going to start with simple arrangements and move our way to more complex blues pieces. But you're always going to know what to practice next. And you're going to see real progress as you stack skills as you go. The Fingerstyle Roadmap is available inside myBGI, the premium membership from Blues Guitar Institute. You'll also get access to the full library of courses, quick licks, backing tracks, and access to the amazing community full of players ready to jump in and lend a hand. The link's in the description if you want to check it out and join us, but whether or not you join, make sure you download that free quick start guide and work your way through these exercises. They literally are the foundation that everything else builds upon. Thanks for hanging out with me in this lesson. I'll see you around BGI for the next one. Until then, practice smart and play on.